All right, this recording we're going to start with looking at just the overall growth structure of the spinal cord. But just as a reminder, the spinal cord is part of your central nervous system. So with brain and spinal cord, it's a central nervous system. So spinal cord is going to be responsible for relaying information from the brain down and from, say, things from the periphery up to the brain for processing. So it's going to be transmitting information, say, to and from the brain. So first thing first is the spinal cord is it's a little over a foot long. It's about like 17 inches long. And it does start at this opening in the base of the skull called the foramen magnum. Literally means a large opening. So it exits through the foramen magnum. And it tapers, it comes down and it tapers down to something referred to as the conus medullaris. So it tapers to the conus medullaris and it corresponds in an adult between your first and second lumbar vertebra. It's going to be different in a child, but in an adult, you're going to see it corresponds to between the first and second lumbar vertebra. The spinal cord does contain a total of 31 spinal cord segments. Okay, so we have 31 segments. I'm going to write 31 segments. And I'm just going to show you, I'm zoomed in on the open back torso model from lab. And where you kind of see right here, that is the conus medullaris, where the end of the spinal cord is. And it will, in lab, if you have me for lab, I will show you with the whole thing, with the overhead camera, and kind of show you kind of how it ended between the first and second lumbar vertebra. So the segments, we have 31 spinal cord segments. From each side originates your various spinal nerves, because we have 31 pairs of spinal nerves. So we have our different regions, kind of correspond to the same names as we talked about spinal nerves. Is you have cervical spinal cord segments, and it's going to equate the number of segments will be the same number of pairs of spinal nerves that we have. So we have 8 cervical spinal cord segments. Then the next would be our thoracic, and we have 12 segments there. Lumbar, 5 segments. Sacral, 5. And coccygeal, we have 1 segment. So again, off of each of these segments, you'll have your various spinal nerves. I want you to note that in the cervical region and in the lumbar region, we have what we call enlargements. We have a cervical enlargement and a lumbar enlargement where we have more gray matter. The reason why you have more gray matter is because those areas of the spinal cord, it has to provide more control over your upper and your lower limbs. So the cervical will be supplying control over your upper limbs, while the lumbar will be supplying control over the lower limbs. So that's the reason why we have those. Also, I'm going to come back here to this picture I showed you earlier. So here's that conus medullaris. We see all this here, okay, and then it extends down. I skipped some part, and it kind of extends down here. This is called the cauda equina. What the cauda equina is it's the ventral and dorsal roots of your spinal nerves that haven't exited yet. Okay, so it's going to be the L2 down to S5 into the coccygeal. So that has the ventral and dorsal root of those spinal nerves. So they call it the horse's tail, because remember, it's a horse's tail, which is the cauda equina. Also, I want to mention is something before I show you something else, is when you do the cross section of the spinal cord, you're going to see kind of differences in the amount of like white matter and gray matter. And if you look down here in the sacrospinal cord, you don't see a lot of white matter. Why is there so little white matter? Well, you think about it, is the cervical spinal cord has information coming from all the way down to your feet up to the thing, and information going down from the brain down to the feet. It has to have more white matter because the white matter is those myelinated axons. So it's got getting information from all parts of the body and getting all the way down. In the sacrospinal cord, it's only has things coming from the very lower part of your body. So there's a lot more white matter in the cervical spinal cord, not so much in the sacral spinal cord. Also, I do want to mention an importance of the fact that the spinal cord ended in an adult between your first and second lumbar vertebra. Is your cerebral spinal fluid will continue to circulate past that. And if we want to do a lumbar puncture or a spinal tap to sample some cerebral spinal fluid, is they want to insert the needle in a place that they can get the CSF without risking damaging the spinal cord. So they will insert the needle below that area, below the conus medullaris, and typically they insert it between the third and fourth lumbar vertebra into the subarachnoid space so they can get some CSF from it. So that's kind of the importance of kind of knowing where that spinal cord ends. Other thing, I forgot to mention, I got to come back here, find my picture, is something called the filum terminale. And on this picture, you see it right there. And on the earlier pictures, they have it listed here. It literally means a terminal filament. It represents that distal portion of pia mater that was surrounding the spinal cord. It helps to form something called the coccygeal ligament, which provides kind of longitudinal stability to the spinal cord, kind of anchors it down. So that's the filum terminale that you have there. Okay, so it's just pia mater. It's not any part of the spinal cord. Okay, so it's just pia mater. And you saw it on that model right there. Okay. All right, so this is going to be just the first part. Next recording, we're going to look at some associated structures with the spinal cord before we actually go and look directly into the spinal cord.